And I believe that more companies should do and stop worrying about trying to create a Super Bowl ad because they're very costly and there's no chance to guarantee that it could work. And there's not enough time to go through the adaptation process to say, did that work? Once you put it together, the market's going to tell you if it's good or not. Whereas when you're talking authentically, you can engage with people and they'll tell you that was a really boring video. It's too long. You rambled on. You get live market feedback that companies pay millions for to get a public sentiment on. They'll tell you right there instantaneously. So I'm 100% on that camp of like the filming from a potato. I think it works.
You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast, brought to you by focus-biz.com.
Welcome back to another episode. With us today is the head of business development for Digital Amplification, Ryan House. Their service, Digital Amplification, is a full-service marketing agency that has worked with clients like M&M's, Victoria's Secret, Express, Bed Bath & Beyond, and many others. Ryan, so excited to have you on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Chris. It's an honor to be on the podcast. As I mentioned a little bit beforehand, I've listened to some episodes. I'm kind of a newer listener, so I really appreciate being here today.
Welcome, and we appreciate the support. Ryan, tell us about your entrepreneurial journey. What were you kind of doing before that kind of led you into getting into digital amplification here?
If I had to go back to a single moment, it would be my grandfather. So he was in the business world, right? It's not like professional sports where there's a hall of fame for things. I think he should be in it, but his name is Robert Zimmerman. He was the president of a company called MCI back in the day. They had a movie about it, Fun with Dick and Jane, WorldCom. So he was not on the WorldCom. He was one of the good guys. But he was a DC cat and one of the cool cats of the 80s and 90s. And he started off as a BDR and worked his way up and built one of the most dominant business development teams of the 90s. And it was so dominant that Verizon and AT&T had to team up together illegally. They lost a lawsuit. My grandfather, he's still in the lawsuit transcripts that you can find online today, but they basically did a monopoly to try to take them down. But he just developed this unstoppable force of these phone wolves, as I call them. There's a whole floor of people that would just hit the dialers all day long, getting people signed up for phone plans. So my point there is that I would visit him in the summers. I was very close with him. I didn't really have a father figure. I called him Papa. So I'd spend the summers with him. He would bring me down to the office. And I placed my first cold call when I was either 14 or 15. I can't remember which one it was, but I was 14 or 15 when I placed my first cold call. And everybody wants to make their father figure proud. So I made it a point. I was like, I'm not going to leave here without getting one today. And I got one. And then he was just so proud. He's beaming ear to ear. And that feeling was just like, man, I found my calling. So I knew I had the semblance like maybe I am cut out for this. So that's how I got into like the business and sales portion of things. But where I got into the marketing aspect of things is I wanted to be a professional soccer player. And I had 2 knee surgeries by the time I was 18. Now, that's not the reason I didn't make it professional. I probably would not have made it anyways, but it gave me a lot of time to think when I'm sitting on the couch all day long just recovering. And my aunt at the time had brought me a book called Paid AdWords for Dummies, and it had like a little gift certificate. So I was reading that and I was like, this is kind of interesting. So I actually did it. I started a website building flyers. When I get up and get my knee working again, I can walk door to door and hang up flyers. And then clients started to ask me, do you make the flyers themselves? And I was like, yes. So built the plane while I flew. And I ended up doing really well because I was super young. I was still in high school. And I had the ability to do something that is terrible, which is undercutting the market significantly on prices, right? But that obviously came at a price as well. But I was building websites, now I'm doing paid search. So I started developing these skills naturally, and I was getting a lot of leads to the point where I was able to give my friends jobs. I was on vacation one time in Seattle, the Pacific Northwest, and I would get calls from my friends who were working. And I would say, yeah, just take the whole 100%, just collect the cash, but just make sure that the clients are happy, that kind of a deal. And so I was like, I was growing, and I got this one project that ended up drilling me was this concert that was going on. I think it was like Jason Aldean or something, and they wanted like 120,000 flyers delivered. And it was like a $30,000 or $40,000 deal. And I could not fulfill it because I didn't have enough people. I did the math. I needed like 30 or 40 people to realistically get it done. So I had to unfortunately turn that down. I went to ASU I got a full ride scholarship there. So I had to make a choice, right? I sold the business for a whopping like $7,000. which to me felt like $1 million at the time. It sounds so much cooler than it is. I sold my business, but I stayed with it. So I had that experience, and I would, while I was going to school, I would offer my services like a freelancer to agencies. And I found one full time that was willing to take a flyer on me after a while. So I was working full time while going to school, and I ended up switching to night classes. So I know it's a kind of like a long skewed way, but that's how everything came together, how I got into marketing, sales, business development wrapped into one.
That is such a cool journey to hear how that was first inspired from your grandfather and his business. And unfortunately, it's not surprising and unshocking to hear that these big corporations are doing illegal things to corner markets and put competitors out of business, unfortunately. But I'm glad he was able to make it through and that influenced you and then kind of dive more into just marketing and sales and how can I solve problems? How can I present solutions for people? I mean, very interesting to hear that you hit that snag when it came to fulfillment. You had this big Jason Aldean project, the flyers, the economies of scale were not looking in your favor at that time. You're like, it's
No.
just something that like I can't feel comfortable saying yes to. But those are huge opportunities to have someone of your age getting a proposal like that. That feels pretty great. And even to say I successfully exited and sold a business for a profit, what amount that was doesn't matter. 7K,
Yeah.
that's still a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And the funny thing is, like, the person I sold it to was actually, he's a really hostile guy. He posed as a customer and called me and said, like, how can you assure that my flyers are going to be delivered door to door? How can you assure me? And, like, I don't believe you. So I traced the number back then, and I come to find out it was like my biggest competitor in the area. So I called him, hey, you want my client list? Because some of it was like his old one. So I sold it for less. I didn't really know business that much at the time. I didn't know logistics and all that stuff. So he got a score of a deal, and I'm glad it worked out for him. He ended up being a really good guy. But I thought that was funny that he would do that kind of recon on me.
It's not
Yeah.
uncommon.
Yeah.
It's more common than you think to have either secret shoppers or people pretending to sign up for services, even just reaching out for a quote. They want to see what your process is like. What does that
Yeah.
look like? But that's just how business is. But these things we learn as we go. But it's just a part of the evolution. So now with working with these bigger brands, you're taking that past experience and kind of taking it to this next level here. So it's 2025, are always changing in marketing. What is your strategy for helping a lot of your clients? What do you focus on now to deliver the experience and results that they're hoping for?
Yeah. So I would say that this past year, I'll make a bold proclamation. I believe that this year, and I think it's been trending from a carryover from 2024, that this year in particular, we have seen a supersonic exponential growth in how things are changing, because I've heard for years cold calling is dead. I've heard that SEO is dead, and it never died. It just took on a different form. But I will say this is the first time where we've seen really a transformative shift in so many ways. And that's not just AI and technology. That's actually the consumer. We're in the most skeptical, we're dealing with the most skeptical buyers in history, which is the millennials. And then we're even seeing some younger Gen Zers. They're starting to come up and make decisions on budget and everything like that. Millennials in particular are very skeptical buyers. So the process and the sales cycle has tremendously grown compared to other generations. And if you look at a chart, it gets more and more skeptical as a who do they trust and all that. So really, what to answer the question there, I've been is trying to be as human as possible. Really is my key. And what I mean by that is kicking it old school in the sense of, like, last night, for instance, I went to a meetup off the app, like a social event. I'm going in person. Last year, I did 12 speaking engagements, public speaking engagements, and went to conferences in person, right? Before that, I was a cold email merchant. So I was selling out cold emails, but I'm not ready to say that it's dead, but I will say that it is severely underperforming. And I have colleagues and associates over the years that attest to it. And there's third-party data to support it. So what I've been really trying to do is, in a really hyper fast world like this, with all the AI that's going on, it's sped things up. It's made things more efficient. People can write the perfect email, the perfect pitch. Can they be perfect in person? We're kind of lacking that face to face. So that's really what I've been focusing on, is what are the fundamentals? I'm talking to you right now. We're on a video call, but I can see your face, and I'm talking to you directly as Chris. It's not a message in an email inbox, right? So if you look at this is audio, we're on an audio platform with some visual elements, but there's two humans speaking together right now. So that's really what I've been focusing on. I'm trying to go back to what worked 2,000 years ago. I know there's no podcasting, but there was conversation.
No, I think it's a great strategy. And obviously, you're in the trenches seeing what's going on to see that data. And I would concur with your findings as well in your analysis. Just things are changing. It's always changing every year. Is this dead year? Fill in the date sort of the thing. But yeah, the changes, nothing wrong with going back to building relationships. This is the foundation of how people connect on that more human level. And yes, there's business, but business and personal always mixed together, especially with skeptical buyers. Not only are they more informed and they do more research, but they're really finding things to pick apart and find a reason not to work together as opposed to working together. But that just makes our job a little more interesting, sure, more difficult, but I think that's just the evolution of business and consumer insights.
Yeah, well said. And I would say to add to that as well, we're also in the era where demanded perfection. So what I mean by that is like, especially in marketing, there was a joke in the 80s that I'm probably going to butcher right now, but it was something to the effect of, I'm spending my marketing 50%. I don't know where it's going to. So I don't know if it's working. I did a terrible job at that. But the concept really is that there was no accountability on marketing metrics back then, right? It's either it worked and we don't know how, but it just somehow did, to now where it's like every last little data point is tracked. So it's like you have to adapt to that. Like the reporting is the number one most requested thing from a client. That's what they care about the most. That's how they're making decisions on whether they're going to do business with you or re-sign your contract, is how transparent and how accurate is your data, because their idea is they need to run this up to a CEO. They need to know how every single dollar is performing, and they don't have much leeway. So a CEO will tell a client or tell their director, the VP, hey, we need to see a return on this money here. And you're going to have a quarterly report and tell me how much you made and how you got there. And I want to see every step of it. So knowing that, the complexity to be able to deliver on that when there's that creative aspect of marketing, where sometimes there's just an intangible factor of why something went viral. You could probably name a million people that you're like, why are you famous? How did I hear about you? But it just caught fire. How do you measure that? How do you plan for something like that? You can't. So you're really trying to merge art and science together, whereas really it was more of psychological science, but now we're seeing a data science incorporated. So that's really the evolution that we're seeing throughout decades, just kind of growing on top of each other. So trying to deliver on that, very difficult task. And there's 14,000 marketing agencies in the US alone. So
You're saying there's a chance.
Yeah, pretty much. That's 100%. You're fishing in a big pool with a lot of stiff competition. So to any competitive edge you have, it's a matter of weeks now, as opposed to years before someone catches on or catches up. So how do you get worried about that? Do you stress about trying to be a disruptive unit like Uber, or do you just do things fundamentally that have always worked? You got to go with kind of like what you know is going to work.
Right, absolutely. And when you're trying to take these figures up to the board or the higher ups, trying to justify, okay, this is the return on investment here, it's tough because there's also customer sentiment that goes behind that. And how do you put a price tag and value on that? Because you can't say, okay, for the small price tag of 100K, we got our customers to feel better. And this made them feel a certain way. And they're like, well, that doesn't show up on the spreadsheet here. So that's really difficult, trying to mine customers' perception, how they feel, the understanding of what made them successful, but also these brands, these influencers, trying to mimic copy and styles of certain things. Why did they go viral? Was it the person? Was it the content? Was it just the timing? And I think there's also an evolution between production quality. There used to be a big emphasis on Hollywood and big productions, and now it's becoming more personal, one-on-one. Anyone with a smartphone can now become a content creator. So there's just new opportunities now, but it's interesting to see the evolution of production quality. Do you think that is either going to help or hurt marketing agencies and clients, like as their brand? Should they really focus on being more of that professional, polished brand, or should they be more casual, laid back, natural? Do you kind of see like a focus to be better off?
You hit the nail on the head there. I know my CEO right now is probably like screaming when he was going to hear this, but that's okay. We have a great battle of ideologies a lot of the times, and that's part of a healthy environment. But I will say this, that the polish piece is where most agencies are at, because it's polish. It's a final product that is well designed. But look at it like this. The 80s, when you look at music, here's the best example, is like we saw these big elaborate productions with the hair metal and all of that. But what ended up displacing that was an authenticity and a rawness of grunge, right? The Seattle movement and everything like that. They're wearing flannels. They're wearing things that you could pick up for $15 at the thrift shop because everything's cyclical. And right now, like you said, we're in an era where like someone could have the phone downward angle the chin shot. Just if you're like that, you're a warrior, by the way. Shout out to everybody that does that. But when you have that realness aspect to it, like where you could hold it, look, the data doesn't lie. And what we're seeing is it's the who economy, right? They're not really doing business with a brand. Like you build the brand by being who. So you can take example of Richard Branson, the Elon Musks of the world. They said that they famously don't do marketing, but they did a lot of it. They put themselves out in the public. They are the brand themselves. And so when you think of the brands that they own, you're thinking of the person first as opposed to the logo. You're seeing an image of a person. And that's what people want to connect with. And so the best way to do that is you're seeing the people that are winning and the brands that are winning are the ones that have a stick in their hand and they're walking down the road. They're taking you on a walk. They're driving with you in the car. And I feel like that is actually an unserved part that more companies, it's very hard when you're corporate and established like that. But if this is going out to startups, you're a mid-sized company, take that chance. That is your opportunity to do things that are low cost of production. The speed that you can pump these things out is incredible. And the authenticity that you're able to develop and stand out just by like putting your freaking face into an iPhone is unbelievable. I am 100% on that camp. And I believe that more companies should do and stop worrying about trying to create a Super Bowl ad because they're very costly and there's no chance, a guarantee that it could work. And there's not enough time to go through the adaptation process to say, did that work? Once you put it together, the market's going to tell you if it's good or not. Whereas when you're talking authentically, you can engage with people and they'll tell you that was a really boring video. It's too long. You rambled on. You get live market feedback that companies pay millions for to get a public sentiment on. They'll tell you right there instantaneously. So I'm 100% on that camp of like the filming from a potato. I think it works.
Yes. And isn't that crazy that if you simply just listen to your audience, they will tell you whether you ask or not. They are willing to share that information. Say, hey, I really like this, or here's where I fell off. Here's what you can do better next time. Wow, to get that sort of feedback. Like you said, a lot of companies pay millions of dollars to get that sort of feedback and sentiment from customers. And so to have that as an opportunity is just incredible now. So knowing that almost anyone with an idea and some ambition can kind of get started with a business, what do you think they should do to get started to kind of like first kind of get lifted off the ground? Because there's a great book I read, $1 Million Weekend, from the guy who created AppSumo. I mean, he was talking about that product validation. The market will tell you whether it's a good idea or not. So he said, you don't even need a business card or a website sometimes. Just go ask people, would you pay me money to fix this sort of problem or to do something like this, which you already kind of touched base on a little bit more. Do you kind of see that as a new opportunity for younger entrepreneurs and newer startups versus kind of like the established brands already?
100%. I think there's a massive opportunity to not have a brand yet. And the reason for that is because when you think of some of the most popular brands in the world, you have a perception of them already. You kind of know what you think about them. Like if you were to say McDonald's, you're never going to associate them with a premium burger company, right? That's their niche, is like they're fast, convenient, and some people say they love the taste, right? They load it with sugar and everything like that, but they've run a great business because it's consistent. But when you're first starting out, you have an opportunity that corporations don't. They're bigger, they have a bigger budget. They're very rigid, though, what they can do and what they can test out and experiment with. You have the opportunity. Let's say that you're just starting a business, and let's say it's something like you sell widgets of some sort, and it's really not all that crazy. It's kind of a company that we worked with is called Treesy Wrap, where it gives you perfect lighting on a tree that you wrap around. It's one of those products that reminds me of the blanket with arms. It's Snuggie, right?
Yep,
Like one of those. It's a $500 million business. But let's say you have one of those. Well, you have an opportunity at that point where you can get creative with how you're going to do your marketing. So like, for instance, TikTok and all these other platforms, YouTube's the short form videos. There's lighting companies across, like a lighting signage company, I think in China, that they just riff on other videos. And then he does brilliantly. It's genius. And he'll riff on current events going on in viral videos and put his little input and go, and by the way, here's our sign company. Brilliant. He'll do a quick pivot and be like, you need the best signs possible. You're going to come to whatever company it is. That's brilliant. How much money did that cost him? It cost him 60 seconds, whatever he did to splice it, add another hour to get it kind of crisp, and maybe a couple takes. But that company they're going viral nonstop. They're getting covered by other influencers because of how funny it is. It's a digital sign company. And it's not like some groundbreaking neural link thing with chips in your brain. It is a sign company. And so it doesn't really matter what you do. You can make anything fun, even if it's not a fun product. You have that ability to do that. But the other side of that is got to get uncomfortable. That's your trade-off for the low cost production. You got to put yourself in a position to be criticized and deal with the growing pains that comes with the wild, wild west of the internet and the trolls that come along. But if you can weather that storm, you can grow like at a speed that is corporations would die for.
Absolutely. Very well said, and really great points just for those who might be thinking about starting or who have maybe been feeling like they're spinning their wheels for a few years. You're maybe just a few videos, a few connections away from really gaining that momentum into new heights. For those who are interested in working with you, where can they find you online and get connected with you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably my primary channel. I'm not really on Facebook or anything like that. But if you type in Ryan House Digital Amplification, I should come up. It'd be linkedin.com/in/house 2024. I know we're in 2025. I got to update that, but 2024 or Ryan@digitalamplification.com is how you can find me as well to email me.
Nice. I love that. That's wonderful. Rather than changing the hyperlink, maybe create a new profile. You can see how many connections you make each year, and each profile is associated with that year.
Probably need to do that anyways, because over the time I was a consultant and everything, you meet a lot of people. And I'm not saying that they're not useful connections. I don't really like to think of people like that, but there's a targeted component to it. There's some industries I don't really service anymore that it'd be nice to have a little bit more of a focus list. So maybe I'll do it for that reason.
Ryan, we just want to leave you with the option to have the floor. Is there anything we haven't discussed yet that you're passionate about, or any exciting projects you have coming up in 2025 that you're excited to be launching? Just your opportunity to have the floor here.
Yeah. So I would say that one of the biggest things that I'm working on, and this is a lifelong mission, by the way, is the first person-owned, a citizen-owned smart city. And that sounds crazy. And like, I know it sounds crazy, but it almost happened before. And it's really more practical conversation for another day. But that's what my life mission is. And I have undying belief that I can make it happen. The reason I would do something like that is because I believe that humans ourselves, we work in packs very well. We've kind of developed that way. And we're in a world right now where we're more connected than ever, but the most distant we have been. And we typically tend to flourish and build civilizations built on our community. So right now, there's Bezos and Bill Gates that want to build these smart cities, and it has a really bad reputation. But I believe in something like a power outage or access to water, which in Arizona we dealt with during the pandemic. I thought it was wild when I went to the store and I was told 1 case per person. Kind of scary. Worms, birds, everybody has access to water, right? And I think that's a fundamental, at the very least. Water and air is a fundamental right. I think it's crazy that people can tell you how much you could drink. So that would be part of it, is farming on the smart city, and also sustainable sources like a power grid and things like that. So I'm working towards that and was very close to it. We just had some governmental issues in Georgia. One governor liked it, and then a couple senators kind of put the block on it, but I'm not going to give up. So that's my lifelong mission here.
That is really cool, and an interesting concept that I've only heard about with those smart cities, specifically from corporation-run private cities or states or sovereign nations, was their concept. And it's unfortunate because they're giving it a bad rap right now, just that concept and idea, because we see what they've done in their current position to take care of people. And that will be amplified, unfortunately, once they own you and the house and the water and the air that you breathe. That they're just going to have to be some clever ways on how the idea is presented and kind of won over by the general populace to take on that idea, to try to distance yourself from the bad concepts from it. But super fascinating, Ryan. We appreciate you coming on to share your wisdom, tips, and tricks with us. We'll have you on for another episode. Feel free to touch base with us here and there. Thanks for coming on and sharing your advice with us.
Likewise. Thank you very much. As I mentioned, honored, and I'd be happy to be back.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.